Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to be talking about white balance and how it can be typically one of the most underrated or overlooked camera settings because most people like to just keep it on auto. And I hate to break it to you, if you're one of those people, then you're missing out and you're probably using it all wrong. So let's dive into it and talk about how to using the correct white balance can just level up your footage and just make your videos look that much better. So first things first, what is white balance? White balance is essentially the color temperature of your footage, and you adjust it to match whatever light source is going on in your scene at the time. It ensures that your whites stay white and colors overall just stay natural all around. It's measured using the Kelvin scale from 0 to 10,000. So common things such as, your typical household light bulb can hit from either the 2500 to 3000 Kelvin range, which is more on the warm end. Daylight hits around usually 55 or 5600 Kelvin, which is more on the neutral side. And blue hour or a more overcast day can hit anywhere from 6000 to 7000 Kelvin, which is more on the cool end. So the problem is most beginner filmmakers and even a lot of more experienced filmmakers all use auto white balance because, it is easy and convenient. Trust me, I used to be guilty of this myself. But the problem with that is when you use auto white balance, you actually let your camera decide the color temperature of your scene for you, rather than you yourself, the artist. And you can trust that your camera can get it right sometimes, but there are going to be times where your camera will probably, not be going for whatever desired mood or look you're going for. And sure, you can go into your editing software and adjust the white balance using the temperature slider or the color wheels, but at that point you're adding additional warmth and coolness on top of whatever color temperature you already set in camera, which if you're looking for the most optimal results, probably isn't the best way to go about it. The only exception to this rule is if your camera actually shoots in RAW, and that's only usually reserved for super high-end cinema cameras and isn't really readily available in most consumer mirrorless cameras. The other issue with auto white balance lies if you're shooting outdoors or anywhere where if your lighting isn't really controlled. This can actually really affect your white balance, especially if you set it on auto, because if your lighting changes mid-shot, your camera will actually try to adjust and compensate for it, which can just totally affect the mood and vibe that you already have set or you're trying to go for in your shot. This is especially apparent in skin tones because if this shift happens mid-shot, you can either look really lifeless if you're too cool, or you can look like you just came straight out of an oven or got some kind of crazy tan if it's too warm. So finding the right balance in your scene really just comes down to a few things. A lot of professionals like to use a white or gray card, but if you're more of a run and gun filmmaker such as myself, then it just really comes down to knowing your location, your lighting source, and overall what mood and look you're trying to go for. You don't need to make this overly complicated, so just here are a few tips that I like to remember. For daylight, I like to set my white balance to 5600 Kelvin. I actually keep it at this for pretty much 90% of my shots because I personally prefer a more natural look to my footage. For blue hour or anything more overcast, I actually even bump my white balance a little bit higher to about 6000 to 6500 because I feel like the added warmth actually adds a nice contrast to all the blueness that's already going around in those type of environments. Lastly, if I'm shooting indoors or anywhere with tungsten lighting, I just set my white balance to 3200 or 3500, somewhere in between there, just to match whatever lights I have going on in those scenes. At the end of the day, it really just comes down to what kind of look you're trying to go for as, the filmmaker / artist. Remember, just like every other setting in your camera, it's really just a tool to help you achieve whatever desired look you're going for. So instead of leaving it on auto, I recommend using it to your advantage and setting it manually. Well, that's it for today. And if you made it to the very end, I greatly appreciate it, and I encourage you to leave subscribe, and let me know in the comments how do you set your white balance? Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and in the meantime, take it easy.